Well, Alex, I would love for you to first tell us a little bit about your background and really how you came to become both a mentor and a
Okay,
choreographer
sure.
with dancers.
Well, I have been dancing since forever, my whole life. Just like many of us dancers, it's like I don't remember a time when I didn't dance. And I went on to
Yes.
college and studied performance, and I ended up with a degree in management and production for dance, as well as a degree in advertising, which came in handy with all this entrepreneurialness and social media and all of that. So that's kind of that. But then I also have taught ever since I guess, turned about 18. I've taught in the classroom and I've choreographed. I started traveling and guest teaching probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And so, I've kind of seen, I like to think of it like I've seen the industry from the grassroots with like, all the different
Yeah.
studios. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've covered so many different bases that have really accumulated together to support the work that you do now with dancers, which I think is so interesting because if we really look at the shift in the last 10 years within the dance industry in of itself and the role that obviously social media has played, the role that the pandemic has played with for dancers, there's been so many shifts. So to have all of these different hats essentially that you have worn just throughout your academic training and your dance training, it it's nice to know that that has been also that all has been so helpful for you in
Yeah,
really
thank you. I
cultivating what you do
appreciate
now.
that. Yeah, I think pretty early on, I figured out, well, uh, I had some coaches that were looking out for me, and then some that are a little more questionable. I am who I am because of them. But I did have some coaches, tell me like, you need to be able to market yourself. You need to be able to, um,
Yeah.
get your schedule and advocate for yourself. And I guess I didn't at the time. I was like, okay, I guess I'll just study all those things. And then another thing that really sparked my interest was I noted really early on that a lot of there's no certification, there's no governing body of dance, there's no one who's like, hey, this person is not ready to be a teacher, or that's a practice that is not okay.
Yeah.
And so something that I really noticed was, well, why don't I study what the education world is doing and I apply that to dance? And so I spent a lot of my undergrad in the education school and not just in the dance department, because I think that there are a lot of traditions and practices that could use a little updating, just a little bit. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go I guess what I'm trying to say is I've always thought of life informing the art, right? So if we don't go and live and have these other aspects and have other things that we're passionate about learning about, then we can't dance about anything. So because I love dance so much and I want it to continue and I want the dance world. I mean, like, I want to like save the whole dance world, like um I want other kids to experience the passion that I always felt, maybe without some of the outdatedness. But I knew that in order to do that, I had to be really, knowledgeable. And I took a bunch of physics classes, a bunch of psychology. So I really, I guess, dug into sort of the more academic, scientific research side to inform my teaching.
That is so incredible. I just want to unpack some of this before I even move on with our more scheduled questions because this is so insightful. The first thing immediately that just comes to mind to me is just the similarities that I have experienced in my work as a clinician for dancers. The fact that when it comes to
Mhm.
something like nutrition for dance,
There's
there's no governing body. There is no um, I will say in the last 5 years,
right.
we definitely have made strides in getting
Mhm.
some research together. But much of
Correct.
it is pulling from the sports community, which can be comparable, but also
Mhm.
is very much different and not necessarily comparable or applicable to dancers. And even in my own work, have had to piecemeal really put together
Right.
various advanced certifications as a dietitian in a
Mhm.
way that I feel, what best supports dancers. It's not just about sports nutrition, but it's also about, being
Right.
informed about eating disorders and disordered eating and a health at every size approach, and having to put all of this together to truly not just support individual dancers, but the dance industry at large is so incredibly important. And one thing that you said that, oh my gosh, hits home so much for everything. The reason why I have these chats is the fact that our experiences in life
Mhm.
definitely come to the stage and they come to the studio. And a lot of our younger dancers miss this, right? And I was guilty of this too. Just
Mhm.
becoming very hyper focused in my technique and my training. It's so hard to, think about the importance of what else are we doing in life and how does that balance actually translate to artistry, to what we're bringing on stage.
There was a period of time when a teacher in college, a professor, and I keep bringing up professors and teachers because um it's such a master centered industry, in that you're always answering to somebody, you're always
Yeah.
trying to please the director, or you're trying to get the attention, which, as somebody who's naturally very like rebellious and creative and spunky and let me question authority, was a little difficult and still is. But needless to say, she said, are you not passionate about dance anymore? And I was like, I think you missed the point. I am actually so passionate about
Mm,
it that we have boxed it in so much that I'm uncomfortable and now advocating for myself. But what she was trying to say was, oh, you're just not passionate about it anymore. And for so long, it was like, oh, you have to be
mm,
passionate. You have to have the grit. You have to. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that if I weren't passionate about it, I wouldn't be here speaking with this teacher, whatever I was talking with her about. But yeah, I do. I I have, and that is something that I think has been a little lost in my acro branding. Like, I think I did too good of a job branding acro, and some people don't know that I am a dancer and a dance teacher. Like, that's my main thing. Like, for me, acro is, and we'll talk about this in a second, but it's it is my method and my medium, but what's
yeah,
important to me is
yeah.
helping shape the dancer for the performance, right? So it's not about the tricks, and it's not about, oh, how many things can we pack into this solo or whatever. It's about giving more technique, which provides more artistic freedom, right? Um, and giving them the strength and the flexibility to be able to then translate to all their other areas of dance.
And also, just to continue on this little tangent, just because, we're bringing up such good topics here, I find that, I'll be honest, I'm guilty of this myself, please. And I want you to educate us and educate me, is that when I originally think of
Mm-hmm.
acro, I do think immediately of the tricks. And you are defining
Mm-hmm.
so much more depth in this art form in of itself. I would love to hear a little bit more detail about how you are utilizing acro to
Mm-hmm.
benefit other forms of dance, because I think that is where
Yeah.
things get lost in translation. And like I said, I take full responsibility of being guilty about this myself. I want to learn more about how dancers can utilize something like acro to support
Mm-hmm.
their whole being.
Sure. I will start with, well, two things. One, I think that for so long, you know, and this might be a whole separate conversation. It was ballet is the foundation of everything, and it's like, but there are art forms that came with, that don't really have it. So I kind of dug deep and was like, okay, it's foundational. Why? Because there's structure, there's terminology, You know, there's form, there's lines, you know, there are different aesthetics, but at the end of the day, there's kind of like a standard. And I think that a lot of people kind of cling to that standard, and it fits for a lot of people. But what I love about acro is that it has all those same things. It has terminology, it has the lines, it has the structure, and it's also more playful in nature. And as somebody who had undiagnosed ADHD, like I would be like, why is this class going so slow? I want to love it, but I'm so bored. And so, and you know, I really did love ballet. And it took, when I was about 12, I was like, okay, I can find the beauty in the calm and the stillness and the repetition. But for a while, as a young kid, I didn't quite understand like why everyone was saying this was the most important thing. And I think that that works for some people. And I think that it's perfectly okay to have other ways to cross train your body. Like maybe jazz is your favorite and you want to have the foundations of acro there as well as ballet, right? Of course, like I don't want the ballet teachers coming for me. I love ballet. I love it. I love it so much. You know, even despite the many times that I was told that I would never be a ballerina, or I wasn't good enough, or my body wasn't right, or whatever, all those archaic thoughts. But I actually hosted a master class with some Cirque du Soleil artists. And at one point, one of the kids started laughing, and I was like, stop laughing, be serious. And they were like, no, this is it's circus. It's a circus art. It's fun. It's supposed to be playful. It's okay to laugh if you fall. It's okay to not beat yourself up if you know, can't do it right away. And that was something that was really appealing to me really early in my acro days, because what was so defeatist, you know, was, I can't get all the way over my boxes yet because my feet are shaped a certain way. And so I'm a failure. But in acro, it's very inherent that you have to fall a lot of times. You're not going to be perfect. Everybody falls. And so for me, I think that I really liked that I'm able to provide a strong technical foundation, use the elements of ballet, use the terminology, the tendu, the positions, it coincides, right? Like in parts of Europe, ballet companies do acro as well, like as their cross training, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, I forgot the original question, but yeah.
Well, hold on. Truly, it's such a testament to, for me, having been that type A perfectionist dancer that really became so limited in their ability to truly move forward. And with so many of the dancers that will come to me for support and are often found to be very self-limited because of their mindset, because they don't necessarily have that practice in their training that's saying that it is okay to fall, that falling actually just really progresses you further. You know, in my opinion, it sounds like that training not only coincides for ballet and for, you know, more classical training, but actually could be so enhancing for it. Actually, it's so that is honestly fascinating to hear, and I think it makes a ton of sense. Thank you for that. Alex, I'd love to hear a little bit about your work that you are doing now. I don't want to say this wrong, but is it called
Yes,
Shape?
it's Shape. My initials are APP, so that's why there's two P's. And I always like, you know, sneaking my little name and things. I don't know. So I have a professional company. It's smaller and local, but there's no telling how much it's going to grow. Kind of what we have done. We started it right before the pandemic, and then it was like, and now we're, you know, kicking it back up. But basically highlighting just emotional inclusivity, diversity, body type diversity, and neurodivergence, and basically saying, come as you are, whatever shape you are in, whatever size you are, that's your paintbrush, right? And it's not even about the look of that form, right? So my concept is we appreciate the art for what it is and not trying to change it into something else. So, I think for so long I felt like, okay, well, my body type isn't going to fit with other people, so there's no jobs for me or whatever. Or it'd be like, well, you can be on Broadway and play the comical character, or, now there are some other like plus size options, but not very many. And I was actually not always plus size. I was regular sized, and then, I had babies and grew up and became an adult, and we all grow up and out, and that's just what happens. So I decided to make my own space. I was like, well, if nobody wants me, I'm just going to make my own. So originally I was like, yeah, I want to perform, I want to create, I want to be a part of the art. So it's really just project based right now. And we'll meet up and we'll do choreography, we'll do concept videos, things like that. But the main thing that I would really love to see in the future for it is a fully developed professional company where dancers are paid full salaries with benefits, which would be awesome, will be awesome. And a place where dancers who are not the typical normative body, mind, emotional, whatever, they have a place that they can look up to and say, oh, I can be a professional dancer because I could do that. And so for me, I think that a lot of what I do is about being representation, and advocating for others who maybe don't feel comfortable speaking up, or even advocating. I mean, there are dancers on my company who are the dancer body type and still have body image self issues, and to me it's all heartbreaking, right? Like, we should not be sacrificing our heart for our art, right? Like, it should be supportive of our health and growth as a dancer and human being. So what I see for the future, and actually Mia Michaels is really excited about this, just to name drop a little bit. But yeah, in the future, I would really love to cast a wide net. And I just want to find like powerful, strong women, and just like, I just want to guys, look, it can be beautiful. Like, it doesn't matter like what the body is shaped like. And so that's kind of where I'm headed with that.
Incredible, and so beyond needed in the dance world. One thing that I'm often, saying and working with dancers is the importance of the environments that we're dancing in. And the bottom line is, if it's not supporting you for your body being in a place that is a body that is your happiest body, and what that means is a body that's not having to be maintained by restrictive dieting or exhaustive exercise routines, and these very harmful food and body ideals that are set forth by diet and wellness culture. And at the end of the day, what dancers experience when they fall vulnerable to that, because unfortunately they do fall vulnerable to that, is shortened careers, injuries. What is it doing for us as an industry? It's just putting our dancers in a place where they cannot really continue to create and to move and to do what we do best, as artists. So the need for what you're doing is just so incredibly out there. I cannot even tell you how appreciative I am of you and of your work, that everything you're doing, and not just in what you're creating, but also in the example that you're setting for other dancers to advocate for themselves and to say, if something is not feeling right, then instead of just trying to change myself to fit in for it, how can I actually, create
Right.
my space that works for me, right?
And I think in other parts of the arts world, it's the norm to create your own stage, right? Like it's like I'm the creator and
Yeah.
I'm making this, and you either like it or you don't, but I'm doing what I love. And I feel like that is actually how our dance world is going to progress, because there's like 20 companies in the world that pay a livable wage. Like there need to be more jobs, but we have to make them, right? We have to create them. And I love being able to empower. I mean, I have students who will be like, I want to be a producer. I want to, be a choreographer, a director. And I'm like, yes, let's build those leadership skills, because we need more people who do want to lead and do want to provide more opportunities. Because right now it's like you have to fit into these tiny little molds or these, just different things. And not everybody fits in those molds, and it can feel like, okay, I guess I just have to give up and sell my soul to corporate America. And I even find I still struggle with this to this day, and I still a lot of what you're saying about restrictive dieting and injuries and all of that, like I won't get into too much detail, but I have had my fair share of um, damage control that I've had to do as an adult. And actually, when I found your page, it is so inspiring. One of the most powerful things about it to me is that, to me, when I see you, you have you have a traditional dancer's body, but you are still arguing for the health of people. And because it's not about what you look like. And for so long, it was like, I'm looking for advice from a certain type of person, but again, it's not even the form, it's the inside, right? Like it's our motives, it's how we're thinking about it. It's we're letting our day be controlled by something that's supposed to just fuel us.
I've written about just my own privileges that span beyond just my thin privilege, but also just my privileges in working in the space that I do. It's very unfortunate, and there are like tiny, tiny, tiny shifts being made, but the field of nutrition dietetics is unfortunately very white. It's very white and it's very thin. And the road in of itself to becoming a dietitian to support and help others is so very difficult to attain from a financial perspective, from a time perspective. There are some great accounts that are working to make these shifts in the dietetics field that, in my opinion, really do help to translate to even the dance field in of itself. It's an unfortunate truth that needs to be changed. And what we need to do, what I try and do is, acknowledge my privileges and use them in any way that I can to help dancers build supportive habits without feeling like they need to change the way they eat or utilize food to impact their bodies in a way that truly is not going to support them, or that is just feeding into this culture of truly harmful ideals, whether it's surrounding food or whether it's surrounding bodies. So I do appreciate that you bring that up. And I think it's incredibly important. It's very problematic, not just in the dance industry, but in the dietetic field, very much so. So, changes, again, it's glacial, but hopefully down the road, those
for
changes
sure.
will be made.
And I think part of it is that the more people like you and I continue to do our work, and I don't know if you agree, but like being a trailblazer is a lonely path, because there's nobody ahead of you telling you you're doing the right thing. This is it. You're doing great. And we have to kind of find little pockets of support with other people who are also doing, like, I call it like fringe roles, like just everything that is needed to support the overall art of dance. And it there are times when I'm like, am I making an impact? Am I doing what I was meant? Am I doing my calling? Like, am I? And then something pops up, or I have a conversation like this, and I'm like, oh yeah, like this is very important, and reminding myself of my why, and the other thing that's hard about it is you may never even see the impact that you're making, and some people may never even give, not necessarily the credit, but like, what I mean to say is you can spark and plant a seed, and who knows where it could grow to. So, I think that especially with like racial diversity and whatnot, it's slow, but definitely progressing. And the more that people are learning how to speak to people with body types unlike their own, and to respect their, like, I'm always going to have curves. I had curves since fourth grade, like I can't get rid of it. I don't know. Do y'all want me to get surgery? I don't know what you want me to do. So I actually had a modeling agency tell me to grow a quarter of an inch. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. I can put on heels. Like, I don't know what you, and it's funny because it's such, thing. And I have done modeling, plus size modeling, and then I lost so much weight and then did regular modeling, but I wasn't, that's a whole nother topic. But I definitely, I find myself in these very appearance based places, but I, in my heart, am about what's inside. And so it is hard to be in a career path in an industry that the values don't always align with the bigger values, right? So I try to remind people, like, for example, especially with what I do with, mostly, which is acro right now, I try to tell people when they come in, they want to learn an aerial, right? Usually that's what it is. And I'm like, people don't win because they have an aerial in their solo. And they're like, yeah, and I'm like, no, seriously. It's a correlation maybe, but they win because they're hardworking, because they're passionate, because they're artists. Like for me, I will give the information for them to learn the aerial, because I think that some kids feel like they need that in order to even compete or to even be noticed, which is unfortunate. Like back in the day, it was like, oh, she used to go to gymnastics. Cool. She's going to run across the front and do an aerial. It was like, yeah, I don't do that. And I was actually scared to try acro. I was actually discouraged from trying acro because of my body. I was told, oh, you'll never be able to do acro. You might as well not try. And I was like, okay, you're my teacher, so I trust everything you say. Sounds good. But then when I was 18, I was, again, a teacher made me, because I feel like it is such a you just do it, right? You just, back when we were younger, I felt like it was like, you just do it, you don't question. So I finally was told, oh, you need to do this tumbling class. And I was like, okay, are you sure? And it was so fun. And I was like, okay, this is fun. This is coachable. So all this time I was afraid of something just because it was uncertain, just because I didn't know that I was capable of doing it. And, we did 2 days of tumbling, and I did an aerial, and I did a back handspring, and it was like, what else did I miss out on? Because somebody's very limited worldview tried to tell me I couldn't learn something. And so what I find interesting is when I get those students who are like, oh, she wants to do her aerial to put it in her solo because blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, that's what we're working on. But really what we're working on is the mindset. Really what we're working on is them having feeling their worth without the need for validation and approval, or the need for that spotlight. or that, second place, first place overall trophy, and I mean, I try to highlight that the celebration is in the small progress, right? Like we
Yeah.
celebrate the fact that you went home and practiced every day and look, you got better. And so when that is what is important to me, the kids, that's what's important to the kids. And I find that and I actually work freelance. I'm not affiliated with any studio. So I'm able to work with kids from all over. And sometimes I'm the only teacher who pours positivity into the kids. And sometimes I am the only one who maybe says, you know what, mom, this trick isn't ready for next weekend. We need to have a plan B because I don't want her to hurt herself or to have a panic attack worried about an aerial. I'm like, it's not going to make or break her score. And I've helped parents advocate for their children when they weren't ready to do things. Don't tell the owners. I'm so sorry. Don't tell them. But and respectfully so, of course. It's never about going against what the teachers believe could happen. I like to say, like, you know what, I've seen a lot of people, I've coached a lot of people on this. She can get it, but by next week is a very impossible expectation. So that's putting a lot of undue pressure on that kid, and that's going to ruin performance for them if that's what they always think of is, I have to do this one skill. And so it's interesting, and I'm always like, this is coming from the acro lady, like, you don't need your front aerial tomorrow. Like, I promise it's going to be okay. We can work towards it. But for me, that's been a really big, interesting sort of byproduct of my line of work, is that I get a lot of people who actually, it's not the skill, they actually just need a mindset reframing. And so I get to use the process of the skill to help kind of get that growth mindset going.
Again, as you're chatting, so many parallels do come up for me in regards to my work as a dietitian. And, with some dance educators coming from a place of very good intent, especially as it relates to giving dancers suggestions, whether it's suggestions about food, whether it's suggestions, unfortunately, whether it's suggestions about their bodies. And these dance educators very much coming from a place where they just want to see, their dancer with that supposed success that they feel that will bring them. And very often I'm coming as a dietitian saying, well, you know what, actually, let's reintroduce processed foods into that dancer's diet, because first of all, you're striving for very inaccessible and unattainable goals in regards to these very restrictive clean eating lifestyles. Is like just one example of how I see this manifest. And I'll have, it's almost sounds counterintuitive to have the dietitian, right, suggesting, it's like you suggesting that they don't do the aerial. It's like me suggesting that they don't necessarily add fruits and vegetables to every single meal that they're eating. Otherwise, they're quote unquote not a healthy dancer, right? So it's very much you have built and created this expertise for yourself, and you are providing so much value to not just the parents, but the educators in themselves. And, one of my purposes for holding these chats is to really just introduce educators to you, on a more of a broad spectrum, because as dance educators also, we don't necessarily have every tool for our dancers, and being able to refer to individuals who might have more of that expertise in one specific area is something that's so helpful. And on that note, Alex, I would love to ask, is there two pieces of advice? I know there's probably many, but if you could choose just two pieces of advice to give dance educators specifically
in regards to like safety and public health, I feel like the most pressing thing is that if you're having to traumatize a child into a skill or a single, I mean, I've witnessed, parents and teachers sitting in there and be like, you have to do this aerial. And it's, I would say, look at why you think that is so important that it's okay to make this child that uncomfortable. Why do you think that this is holding so much weight? And is there not another way we can showcase something they already feel comfortable and confident in doing, and then work towards that later? So I think that for safety, usually it's the time crunch, right? It's usually she has to get it by this competition, and that actually sometimes makes it take longer because of the pressure. So for safety wise, I would say that if you are finding that you're having to coax a student to do something or just get over a mental block, and I think that, teachers think that they're motivating well. They think they're doing the right thing. They think they're giving them tough love is what they usually put that under. And, not every child responds well to that. It might have worked for that teacher when they were younger. But I think one of the biggest things for me as an educator is I need to figure out what makes that kid work. And then I'm going to meet them there, because it's my job to get the information to them, to deliver the information in a way that makes sense to this child. And as educators, I would say some teachers, I feel like, fall into it for whatever reason. But most of us, I would say, choose to teach and choose taking sort of children under our wings. And we know that it's more than just steps, right? Like I would think that most dance teachers know that it's not just about the steps and it's not just about the trophies. I think that most would agree with that. And then to take it one step further, what works for one child doesn't always work for another child. So I can teach the same exact skill to the same body type, to the same age, to the same level of competition. And this one might take one class and this one might take 3 years. And they are both valid experiences. That doesn't reflect on me as a teacher. I think that a lot of times teachers can kind of take it like, oh, personally, I can't get them to do this thing. So it's our responsibility to guide them on whatever their journey is, right? And so just releasing control of the process and the timing of it, because especially acro being so different and it's upside down, it's different than other types of dance, right? Like we're on our hands. Like, number one, it is super good that we're using more upper body than we do normally, because a lot of dancers have really strong legs and then our upper bodies are not quite as straight. That's okay. Yeah, just a little noodle.
Flailing around.
But I find that it creates really strong dancers, but for their proprioception and for, just the way that they're thinking about things and their creativity. And I think that because to me, acro is dancing upside down, and it's literally another option of expression. And so if you're coming at a skill not with that intention and that motive, kind of like when you're eating a meal, like you can eat the same exact meal, and eat the same exact amount. This one was with healthy thoughts, and this one was not. It was behaviors, right? Like it was there were motivations that were unhealthy. And so it's kind of the intention behind it is important, but also the impact of the teacher, right? So not just I want what's best for my students. Yes, but you have to do what's best for that individual student. And sometimes that's well, in my experience, it's going to look different for every kid, which is one of the reasons why I love private lessons, and why I like to work one-on-one with my coaching, because then I'm able to really kind of individualize. Some students really respond well to my personality or, to certain motivation tactics. And then others just want me to be cut and dry and and boring. And so I become the teacher that they need, as opposed to you become the student that I need.
Yeah. I think that is such valuable advice. I know just from personal experience as a per because I call myself a recovering perfectionist, but if you back in the day, what did tough love?
Yeah.
It led me to burnout. It didn't work for me. And again, with so many of the dancers I just worked with over the last decade, I can confidently say that most dancers fall under that category of being, very harsh self-critics and perfectionists. And this idea of tough love, maybe like you said, maybe it works for some, it doesn't necessarily work for all. And I love this insight of you know taking that, empowering yourself to work with the individual dancer and what they might need. And I think that's really just incredible advice for all dance educators.
I call what and I post about it sometimes, I call it tough positivity, which just to give it like a different,
I love that,
like, name, because I do have high expectations. I do have high standards of excellence. However, there is also room for emotions. There is room for, okay, that wasn't the best, but we can do better. There's room for respect. I mean, it's, to me, you don't have to demean a child to get results. And if that is your only method that works, then you maybe need to look at your own practices. And, I think that anybody who is even listening to anybody about what can I do better is already a step ahead, right? They're trying to grow. They are always being a student and a learner. So anybody who is here or watches later, you're doing great. Hang in there. And I will say also, just in the since the pandemic, like, the emotional responsibility on teachers has been so great. Great as in large. It's felt like a huge task. And I think that it's okay to trust and outsource. And like, I have studio owners who are like, okay, we can't take on any more privates for solo cleanings. Go do a private lesson without, something to that effect. Like, you don't have to do everything, and you can delegate, and you can trust people in the community, because I do think that all these kids right now are really hungry for information, and the correct information. Because really the knowledge, it's all out there, right? Like, it's the world, like, you can literally ask an AI machine a question and it'll tell you something, but it's actually applying it and being held accountable and being motivated to continue.
Alex, thank you so much. This has been such an incredibly valuable chat. I am very excited to have this on our feeds. I will connect you to it so that we can share it together, because this information is truly invaluable. We touched on such incredible points. I would love for you to leave us off with just where dancers can find you. I think you are an incredible source of information, of technical advancement, but of just also inspiration with everything you're doing and the changes that you are, working towards building in our industry. Alex, thank you so much.
Have a wonderful evening.
We'll be in touch.